Part 1. The Rise of Empires. The year is 1000. The great empire of sanctity has been formed in San Marino. The leader, Marcus, is hell-bent on invading and taking over the continent of Europe. He has 10,000 armed swordsmen and a sacred relic with unknown powers. But over in Denmark, a new empire of Frosthaven has formed. This resilient and resourceful country plans on taking over the entirety of Europe. Frosthaven is equipped with the finest 10,000 swordsmen and skilled seafarers. As this new era of violence and expansion begins, the Empire of Sanctity decides to attempt to research gunpowder to give themselves an advantage in future conflicts, and thus, the scientists of Sanctity begin attempting to research gunpowder. Their first attempts are met with some difficulty, but they eventually manage to create some crude hand cannons. However, these guns are useless as they lack any sort of ammunition, and can only be fired once or twice before becoming completely ineffective. The Empire of Frosthaven decides to launch a diplomatic mission to the nearby Duchy of Finland to attempt to negotiate the annexation of their lands into the Empire of Frosthaven. However, the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, Pope Clement III, has decided that he will invade and take the Kingdom of Sweden, as well as the lands around the Baltic Sea. The Pope also plans on invading the Duchy of Finland and bringing it under the fold of the Holy Roman Empire. The Pope sends his best diplomat to the Kingdom of Sweden. But the diplomat is killed and the Pope declares war. The Holy Roman Empire sends 10,000 knights and archers. They arrive and begin an all-out attack on the kingdom. As the Holy Roman Empire prepares to march on the Kingdom of Sweden, they receive a message from the Emperor of Frosthaven. The message states, "We have been informed of your plans to attack the Kingdom of Sweden. Please refrain from doing so. We are prepared to launch a diplomatic mission of our own and negotiate an agreement." The Pope, who is still furious over the killing of his diplomat, sends back a letter saying, "You are too late. My armies are already on the march. You have left us no choice but to defend ourselves. Prepare yourselves for war." The Empire of Sanctity decides to launch a diplomatic mission to nearby Vatican City to attempt to negotiate the annexation of their lands into the Empire of Sanctity. Meanwhile, the Empire of Frosthaven has been secretly preparing their own research into gunpowder. They have managed to recruit an expert alchemist from the East who has already made significant progress in creating functional firearms. Meanwhile, the Empire of Sanctity launches their diplomatic mission to attempt to negotiate the annexation of Vatican City. The envoy, a seasoned diplomat named Lucius, arrives at the gates of Vatican City with a grand procession of soldiers and courtiers. He is escorted to the throne room of the Pope, where he presents Marcus's proposal for the annexation of their lands. The Pope listens carefully, his expression unreadable. After some deliberation, he announces that while he appreciates the strength and ambition of the Empire of Sanctity, he cannot in good conscience allow such a powerful nation to absorb Vatican City into its fold. The Empire of Frosthaven, threatened by the Pope's declaration of war, decide to, with the help of their recently recruited expert alchemist from the East, attempts to research firearms. Meanwhile, the sacred relic in the possession of the Empire of Sanctity is discovered to have the power to raise the dead, which Marcus decides to use to his advantage. He orders his swordsmen to march across Europe, raising an army of undead warriors as they go. Meanwhile, the Empire of Frosthaven attempts to research firearms. The alchemist from the East, skilled in the art of transmutation, begins his work in a secret laboratory hidden deep within the Empire. Using his knowledge of ancient texts and arcane rituals, he begins the arduous process of creating gunpowder. As the days turn into weeks, he tirelessly experiments with different recipes, enduring numerous failures and near disasters before finally succeeding in creating a small quantity of the volatile substance. The Empire of Sanctity, furious at the refusal, decides to use the recently discovered power of the sacred relic to raise the dead, to raise an army of undead soldiers and use them to aid as they attempt a conquest of Vatican City. The undead army is unleashed upon Vatican City, causing chaos and destruction. The once peaceful city is now a battleground as the living and the dead clash. The Pope, horrified by the events unfolding before him, orders his clerics to perform exorcisms on the undead soldiers. The conflict rages on for several days, with neither side gaining a clear advantage. Meanwhile, in Frosthaven, the Empire's expert alchemist has successfully created functional firearms. These weapons are far more advanced than the crude hand cannons of Sanctity, and can be reloaded multiple times. Hearing of the events in Vatican City, Frosthaven decides to intervene and sends their seafarers to aid the Vatican in repelling the invaders. The undead army, now under the control of the alchemist from Sanctity, begins to show signs of intelligence and adaptability. They no longer mindlessly attack. Instead, they form ranks and coordinate their efforts under the command of the necromancer. The battle for Vatican City becomes even more brutal as the living and the dead engage in a savage struggle for control. The Frosthaven fleet arrives at the shores of Italy, led by their skilled seafarers. They disembark their soldiers, who swiftly march toward Vatican City to aid the Pope's forces. Upon arrival, they find themselves caught in the midst of a horrific battle between the undead and the defenders of the Vatican. The Frosthaven soldiers quickly form ranks and engage the enemy, using their superior firearms to devastating effect. The undead army, now under the control of the necromancer from Sanctity, begins to retreat toward the safety of the Vatican walls. However, they are pursued relentlessly by the Frosthaven forces. The necromancer, realizing that he is losing control of the battle, attempts to summon a powerful demon to aid them. A massive infernal creature materializes in the sky, breathing fire and destruction upon the Frosthaven soldiers. The Frosthaven forces, despite the fearsome appearance of the demon, remain steadfast. Their veteran soldiers form a phalanx against the undead horde while their marksmen target the necromancer. After a brutal struggle, they manage to corner the necromancer and the demon. The Frosthaven forces close in, surrounding the necromancer and the demon. The air is thick with the stench of smoke and the screams of the dying. The necromancer, realizing that his fate is sealed, desperately attempts to summon more undead soldiers. However, the combined efforts of the Pope's clerics and the Frosthaven forces are too much for him to overcome. The demon, enraged by the failure of its servant, unleashes a torrent of hellfire upon the Frosthaven soldiers. The flames engulf the area, burning soldiers and undead alike. In the midst of the chaos, a lone figure emerges from the smoke and fire. It is the Emperor of Frosthaven, who has come personally to ensure the victory of his forces. His presence galvanizes the soldiers, and they renew their efforts with renewed vigor. The demon, distracted by the Emperor's arrival, is struck down by a volley of arrows fired by the Frosthaven marksman. With its death, the tide of the battle turns decisively in favor of the Frosthaven forces. The necromancer, defeated and humiliated, is taken prisoner. The Emperor, in a show of mercy, spares his life, but strips him of his power and exiles him from Frosthaven. The Pope, grateful for their aid, bestows upon the Emperor a title of nobility, making him a Duke of the Vatican. The two leaders forge an alliance, vowing to work together to maintain peace and order in their lands. The surviving undead soldiers are put down, and their bodies given a proper burial. The city of Vatican City is left in ruins, but the people are safe. The Frosthaven soldiers begin the long process of rebuilding and restoring the city, while the Vatican's clerics work to heal the wounded and bring comfort to those who have lost loved ones. The alliance between Frosthaven and the Vatican strengthens as they work together to rebuild and protect their lands. The Emperor, now known as the Duke of Vatican, spends much of his time in the city, overseeing reconstruction efforts and forging new friendships with the Pope and other nobles. He is welcomed with open arms by the people of Vatican City, who see in him not only a protector, but also a symbol of hope for a brighter future. The Pope, grateful for the Emperor's support and wisdom, often seeks his counsel on matters of state and war. The two leaders become close allies, sharing strategies and resources to maintain peace and stability in their respective realms. Their bond grows stronger with each passing day, and it is said that their partnership is unbreakable. The Empire of Frosthaven, flushed with their recent victory in close alliance with Vatican City, decides to attempt to establish diplomatic relations with the Kingdom of Sweden. A delegation, led by their most skilled diplomat, is sent to the Swedish court. They arrive at the capital city of Stockholm and are greeted by the King of Sweden. The diplomat presents a formal letter from the Emperor of Frosthaven, offering an alliance and promising mutual protection against the aggressive expansionist policies of the Holy Roman Empire. The King of Sweden, weighing his options carefully, agrees to consider the proposal. Over in the Holy Roman Empire, Pope Clement III, growing impatient with the lack of progress in the war against the Kingdom of Sweden, decides to take matters into his own hands. He secretly assembles a small force of his most trusted knights and archers and sets out to conquer the Duchy of Finland himself. His plan is to use this strategic foothold to launch a more successful invasion of Sweden. Meanwhile, the diplomatic relations between the Empire of Frosthaven and the Kingdom of Sweden continue to progress. After much discussion and negotiation, the two nations agree to sign a treaty of mutual defense and alliance. This treaty not only solidifies their relationship but also presents a formidable challenge to the Holy Roman Empire's expansionist ambitions. The Empire of Sanctity, their armies destroyed, decide to attempt to negotiate a union with Italy. Their emperor, Marcus, sends an envoy to Rome to discuss the possible union between the Empire of Sanctity and Italy. The envoy, Marcus Aurelius, arrives in the Eternal City and is escorted to the Vatican where he meets with Pope Innocent. The two leaders engage in long discussions about the benefits of such an alliance. Marcus Aurelius argues that the Empire of Sanctity could provide military protection for the Vatican, while Italy could offer economic and cultural advantages. In turn, the Pope suggests that such an alliance could strengthen the Christian faith throughout Europe and help to spread the message of peace and prosperity. After several weeks of negotiations, a treaty is finally signed, marking the official union of the Empire of Sanctity and the Vatican. Marcus Aurelius is welcomed as a brother emperor, and his rule is acknowledged over the territories that once belonged to the Empire of Frosthaven. The people of Vatican City celebrate this historic event with great fanfare, lighting bonfires and holding feasts in honor of their new emperor. In response to the loss of Vatican City through its union with the Empire of Sanctity, the Empire of Frosthaven decides to attempt to strengthen diplomatic relations with the Kingdom of Sweden. A diplomatic envoy is sent to the Swedish court, bearing gifts and promises of mutual protection against the Holy Roman Empire's aggressive expansionist policies. The King of Sweden, recognizing the threat posed by the Pope's ambitions, agrees to enter into negotiations with the Empire of Frosthaven. As these delicate talks proceed, word reaches the Pope of the Empire of Frosthaven's attempts to create firearms. Incensed by this perceived threat to his power, Pope Clement III issues a papal bull excommunicating the entire Empire of Frosthaven, declaring all its citizens to be outside the protection of the Holy Roman Church, and calling for a holy crusade against them. The excommunication has a profound effect on the Empire of Frosthaven. Many of its citizens, previously loyal to the Pope, begin to question their allegiance. The Emperor, recognizing the severity of the situation, musters his forces and prepares for war. Meanwhile, news of the Pope's actions reach the Kingdom of Sweden. The king, already alarmed by the aggressive expansionist policies of the Holy Roman Empire, is now even more determined to resist their encroachment. He declares his support for the Empire of Frosthaven and begins preparations for a joint defense. In the Holy Roman Empire, Marcus, Emperor of Sanctity, reacts to the news of the excommunication with a mixture of anger and determination. He sees it as a challenge to his authority and vows to crush the Empire of Frosthaven once and for all. He assembles his armies and marches towards their borders, intent on reclaiming the lands they have stolen and restoring the Holy Roman Church to its former glory. The Empire of Sanctity, after hearing of the strengthened alliance between the Empire of Frosthaven and the Kingdom of Sweden, but more so about the excommunication of Frosthaven by Pope Clement III of the Holy Roman Empire, decides to attempt to become the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire diplomatically and through manipulation due to their army still being destroyed. Their Emperor, Marcus Aurelius, sends an envoy to Rome to discuss the possibility of Marcus becoming the new emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, with the blessing of Pope Clement III. The envoy arrives in Rome and is escorted to the Vatican, where he meets with Pope Clement III. The two leaders engage in long discussions about the benefits of such an alliance. Marcus Aurelius argues that the Empire of Sanctity could provide military protection for the Holy Roman Empire, while also bringing a renewed focus on Christianity and its teachings. He promises to rebuild the Holy Roman Empire into a glorious empire greater than it has ever been. Pope Clement III listens carefully to Marcus Aurelius' proposals and, after much consideration, agrees to support his candidacy for the throne. However, he insists that Marcus must first prove his loyalty to the Catholic Church and its teachings. Marcus Aurelius agrees to these terms, vowing to uphold the Church's authority and work closely with the Pope to ensure the well-being of the Holy Roman Empire and its people. With the Pope's blessing, Marcus Aurelius begins a campaign to win the support of the nobles and citizens of the Holy Roman Empire. He travels throughout the empire, speaking of his vision for a restored and prosperous empire, guided by the teachings of Christ. His charisma and intelligence win him many followers, but he also faces opposition from those who fear the loss of power and influence under a new emperor. The race for the throne intensifies as word spreads of Marcus Aurelius' candidacy. Other nobles begin to vie for the position, each promising their own version of restoration and renewal. The people of the empire grow restless, yearning for stability and leadership. In the midst of this turmoil, the Pope calls for a grand conclave to be held in Vatican City, where the most influential nobles and church officials will gather to decide the fate of the empire. Marcus Aurelius arrives at the Vatican, his retinue of advisors and soldiers surrounding him. He is greeted warmly by Pope Clement III, who commends him on his efforts so far. The conclave begins, with each noble making their case for why they should be the next emperor. Marcus Aurelius delivers a passionate speech, outlining his vision for a united and prosperous Holy Roman Empire, guided by the teachings of Christ. He promises to work closely with the Pope and uphold the authority of the Catholic Church, while also restoring the empire to its former glory. As the debate continues, Marcus Aurelius' rivals begin to grow desperate. Some attempt to smear his reputation, spreading rumors of heresy and ambition. Others resort to threats and intimidation, hoping to sway the vote in their favor. But Marcus Aurelius remains steadfast, maintaining his composure and dignity in the face of these attacks. Pope Clement III listens carefully to each speech, weighing the merits of each candidate. He is impressed by Marcus Aurelius' devotion to both the Church and the Empire, as well as his vision for a restored Holy Roman Empire. As the conclave draws to a close, the tension in the room is palpable. Everyone in attendance knows that the fate of the empire hangs in the balance. Finally, the Pope rises to his feet, his voice carrying through the chamber. "It is with great pride and humility that I announce the new emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, Marcus Aurelius." The room erupts into cheers and applause as Marcus Aurelius is crowned with a golden crown, signifying his new title. He bows his head in gratitude to the Pope and to those who have supported him on this journey. Due to the Empire of Sanctity's recent ascension to being the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, the Empire of Frosthaven decides to attempt a naval invasion of the Kingdom of Norway to expand their territory. A fleet of warships, led by the most experienced admiral, sails towards the coast of Norway. They land at the capital city of Oslo and are met with fierce resistance from the kingdom's well-trained navy and army. The battle rages on for days, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. The Frosthaven forces, however, are better equipped and disciplined, and eventually manage to gain the upper hand. The Norwegian king, realizing the futility of further resistance, agrees to negotiate terms of surrender. In the meantime, news of the naval invasion reaches the Empire of Sanctity. Marcus, enraged by this act of aggression, mobilizes his army and navy, preparing for a two-front war. He knows that he must act swiftly if he is to successfully defend his empire and maintain his authority. The Pope issues a second papal bull, excommunicating the Emperor of Frosthaven and declaring a crusade against him personally, hoping to rally the Holy Roman army to greater fervor. Part 2. The summoning of the elementals. Hearing of the recent conquest of the Kingdom of Norway by the Empire of Frosthaven, the Empire of Sanctity, now at the head of the Holy Roman Empire, decides to invade Germany with their newly restored army, and possibly use the sacred relic if they still possess it. The attack is announced by Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of the Empire of Sanctity and more recently of the Holy Roman Empire. The army of the Holy Roman Empire, now led by the experienced general Marcus Aurelius, begins to march towards the heart of Germany, hoping to retake the lands lost to the Empire of Frosthaven and restore peace and order to the region. The invasion is met with mixed reactions from the local population. Some welcome the new emperor as a savior, while others fear the return of religious persecution and the oppression they experienced under the previous regime. As the army advances, they come across small bands of Frosthaven forces, scattered and demoralized after their recent defeat. Marcus Aurelius orders his soldiers to treat these soldiers with respect and honor, offering them the chance to surrender or join his forces. Many choose the latter, seeing the promise of a more just and tolerant rule under the new emperor. Meanwhile, word of Marcus Aurelius' invasion spreads quickly throughout the region. Some towns and villages choose to welcome him as a liberator, while others remain wary and cautious. The local church officials, many of whom had suffered under the previous regime, throw their support behind Marcus Aurelius, hoping that his reign will bring a return to religious freedom and the protection of the Catholic Church. As the army continues its march, they encounter a group of refugees from a recently conquered village. The refugees tell of how the Frosthaven forces had systematically destroyed their homes and killed many of their loved ones, all in the name of their pagan gods. Marcus Aurelius is horrified by these accounts and vows to bring the perpetrators to justice. He orders his men to search the countryside for any remaining Frosthaven forces and to offer safe haven to those who have been displaced by the war. News of the emperor's compassionate leadership spreads quickly, earning him the trust and admiration of the people they encounter. Word of his just rule and devotion to the Catholic Church begins to reach even the farthest corners of the empire, drawing support from those who had once been skeptical of his reign. As they draw closer to the capital city, anticipation and excitement build amongst the populace, many hoping to witness the return of peace and prosperity under the guidance of Emperor Marcus Aurelius. Meanwhile, the remnants of the Frosthaven forces, now led by their new general, Eric Bloodaxe, prepare for battle. They have fortified their positions in and around the capital city, hoping to make a stand against the invading army. As the two forces engage in a brutal and protracted conflict, it becomes clear that Marcus Aurelius' experience as a general and his ability to inspire loyalty in his troops gives them the upper hand. The battle rages for weeks, with casualties on both sides mounting daily. Throughout the conflict, Marcus Aurelius maintains a steady presence on the front lines, personally leading his troops into battle and encouraging them to fight for a better future. His strategic brilliance and unwavering determination begin to wear down the defenders, who eventually surrender to the Holy Roman Empire. As the dust settles on the battlefield, Marcus Aurelius is hailed as a hero by his victorious troops and a liberator by the people of the empire. The emperor enters the capital city, now restored to its former glory, and is greeted with thunderous applause and adoration from the populace. He walks among them, listening to their stories of hardship and hope, and vowing to work tirelessly to bring peace and prosperity to the lands under his rule. The church officials, grateful for his protection and support, stand beside him, their voices united in praise for the new emperor. Marcus Aurelius takes his place upon the throne, a symbol of both power and responsibility, and addresses the people of the empire. He speaks of his vision for a future where all faiths may coexist in harmony, where justice is served to all, and where the people may live in freedom and prosperity. His words resonate deeply with the people, many of whom had suffered under the tyranny of the previous regime. The Empire of Frosthaven, in reaction to the liberation of the Kingdom of Germany by the Empire of Sanctity-led Holy Roman Empire, decides to try something drastic and risky. They decide to attempt to summon a powerful elemental guardian, and thus, they proceed with attempting the summoning ritual. The ritual takes place deep within the frozen wastes of Frosthaven, as the most powerful mages and sorcerers of the Empire gather around a massive, ancient obsidian altar. For days and nights, they chant, dance, and sacrifice livestock, summoning the elemental energies of fire, water, earth, and air. As the ceremony reaches its climax, a blinding flash of light erupts from the altar, and a towering pillar of ice and snow rises into the air, spinning slowly like a great, frozen top. The elemental guardian has been summoned. The guardian, a massive, humanoid figure carved from solid ice and snow, stands nearly 100 feet tall. Its eyes, two glowing orbs of blue ice, seem to see through time itself. Its icy breath freezes the air around it, and its massive arms end in cruel, jagged icicles that glitter in the faint light. As it steps down from the pillar of ice, its footprints leave deep impressions in the frozen ground, as if it were carved by a giant's hand. The mages and sorcerers who summon the guardian step back, bowing their heads in reverence and fear. The Emperor of Frosthaven, seeing the awesome power and majesty of the elemental guardian before him, feels a mixture of awe and terror. He knows that this creature, now bound to his service, could be the key to victory against the Empire of Sanctity and the Holy Roman Army. The Empire of Sanctity and Holy Roman Empire hear of the Empire of Frosthaven's summoning of 100-foot-tall snow and ice elemental guardian, which is immensely distressing news, but they have a plan. Considering how their last time summoning a demon nearly went well, they decide to attempt it again, to try and counteract Frosthaven's elemental guardian, and thus, the attempted summoning ritual is began. The ritual, performed by the most powerful mages and sorcerers in the two empires, is an awe-inspiring display of arcane might. As the mages chant in unison, their voices rising and falling in a cacophony of ancient words, a vortex of swirling energy forms in the center of the gathering. The air crackles with power, and the very earth trembles beneath their feet. The ceremony continues unabated, as the mages pour their life force into the vortex, drawing upon the very essence of the elements to fuel their creation. As the ritual reaches its climax, the swirling energy begins to coalesce into a massive, glowing orb. The mages step back, breathless and exhausted, their eyes fixed on the pulsing sphere of light. In the blink of an eye, the orb explodes outward, bathing the sky in a blinding light. When the light fades, a massive, towering figure stands before them, its form seemingly made of living water and earth. The elemental, known as the Avatar of the Waters, is the embodiment of the elemental forces the mages have summoned. Standing over 100 feet tall, it has the upper body of a muscular man and the lower body of a massive fish. Its skin is blue-green and glistening, and it carries a trident in one hand, its tip glowing with an ethereal light. The Avatar of the Waters addresses the two emperors, its voice deep and booming like the waves of the ocean. I am the Avatar of the Waters, called forth by your summoning. I am here to aid you in your time of need. What is it you wish me to do? Both emperors exchange glances, unsure of how to proceed. This is the first time they have attempted to control an elemental, and they are unsure if their command will be strong enough. The Emperor of the Sanctity slowly steps forward, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. We ask you, great Avatar, to aid us in our conflict with the Empire of Frosthaven. They have summoned an elemental of ice and snow, and it threatens our lands. We wish for you to confront it and put an end to its reign of terror. The Empire of Frosthaven soon though hears that the Empire of Sanctity has summoned the Avatar of the Waters, an over 100-foot-tall embodiment of the elemental forces of earth and water and, thus, have decided to attempt to summon a legendary creature known as the Frostwyrm, a colossal dragon-like creature of ice and frost, with wings spanning the skies and a breath capable of freezing anything it touches. As a symbol of the harsh and unforgiving nature of the northern lands, the Frostwyrm embodies the raw power of winter and ice. And thus, the Empire of Frosthaven begins the attempted summoning ritual of the Frostwyrm. The ritual is performed at the highest peak of the frozen mountains, where a massive obsidian altar stands, carved with intricate runes and symbols. For days and nights, The most powerful mages and sorcerers of the empire gather around the altar, sacrificing animals and burning incense, drawing upon the elemental energies of ice and cold. As the ceremony reaches its climax, a blinding flash of light erupts from the altar, and a towering pillar of ice and snow rises into the sky, spinning slowly like a great, frozen top. The Frost Wyrm has been summoned. The Frost Wyrm descends from the heavens, its massive, scaled body glistening in the moonlight. Its wingspan is greater than that of any known creature, the tips of its wings scraping against the stars. Its head is adorned with horns of solid ice, and its eyes glow like embers in the depths of a frozen sea. It has a long, sinuous body, ending in a powerful tail that could level mountains. As it lands on the icy peak, its talons tear great gouges in the obsidian altar, and its breath freezes the air, turning it into a shroud of swirling snow and ice. The Empire of Sanctity and the Holy Roman Empire then learn that the Empire of Frosthaven has summoned the Frost Wyrm, a colossal dragon-like legendary creature of ice and frost, which is horrifying news, and thus, they decide to attempt to summon an embodiment of the elements of fire and air, both so they can have embodiments of the four main elements, and so they can have a fiery being to counter all of Frosthaven's ice and snow, and thus, they begin the attempted summoning ritual. The ritual, performed by the most powerful mages and sorcerers in the two empires, is another awe-inspiring display of arcane might. As the mages chant in unison, their voices rising and falling in a cacophony of ancient words, a vortex of swirling energy forms in the center of the gathering. The air crackles with power, and the very earth trembles beneath their feet. The ceremony continues unabated, as the mages pour their life force into the vortex, drawing upon the very essence of the elements to fuel their creation. As the ritual reaches its climax, the swirling energy begins to coalesce into a massive, glowing orb. The mages step back, breathless and exhausted, their eyes fixed on the pulsing sphere of light. In the blink of an eye, the orb explodes outward, bathing the sky in a blinding light. When the light fades, a massive, towering figure stands before them, its form seemingly made of living fire and air. The elemental, known as the Avatar of the Winds, is the embodiment of the elemental forces the mages have summoned. Standing over 100 feet tall, it has the upper body of a muscular man and the lower body of a powerful bird of prey. Its skin is red-orange and crackling, and it carries a pair of wings on its back, each tipped with flame. The Avatar of the Winds addresses the two emperors, its voice deep and commanding like the roar of a raging fire. I am the Avatar of the Winds, called forth by your summoning. I am here to aid you in your time of need. What is it you wish me to do? The Empire of Frosthaven then learns that the Empire of Sanctity has summoned now the Elemental of the Winds, a over 100-foot-tall physical embodiment of the elemental forces of fire and air, and thus they decide to attempt to summon a legendary creature known as the Frost Phoenix, a mythical creature of ice and snow, with wings that span the sky and feathers that shimmer with frost. As a symbol of resilience and rebirth, the Frost Phoenix embodies the enduring spirit of the northern lands in the power of ice and cold, and thus, they begin the attempted summoning ritual. The ritual is performed at the heart of the great frozen wastes, where a massive obsidian altar stands, carved with intricate runes and symbols. For days and nights, the most powerful mages and sorcerers of the empire gather around the altar, sacrificing animals and burning incense, drawing upon the elemental energies of ice and cold. As the ceremony reaches its climax, a blinding flash of light erupts from the altar, and a towering pillar of ice and snow rises into the air, spinning slowly like a great, frozen top. The Frost Phoenix has been summoned. The Frost Phoenix descends from the heavens, its massive, scaled body glittering in the moonlight. Its wingspan is greater than that of any known creature, the tips of its wings nearly scraping against the stars. Its head is adorned with a crown of ice and snow, and its eyes glow with an inner light that seems to pierce the darkness. It has a slender, graceful body, ending in a long, sinuous tail that could freeze the blood of any who dare approach. As it lands on the obsidian altar, its talons tear great gouges in the ice, and its breath freezes the air, turning it into a cloud of swirling snow and ice. The Empire of Sanctity and Holy Roman Empire then learn that the Empire of Frosthaven have summoned the Ice Phoenix, and thus, they decide to attempt to summon the Golden Dragon, a gigantic golden dragon, and thus, they begin the attempted summoning ritual. The ritual, performed by the most powerful mages and sorcerers in the two empires, is another awe-inspiring display of arcane might. As the mages chant in unison, their voices rising and falling in a cacophony of ancient words, a vortex of swirling energy forms in the center of the gathering. The air crackles with power, and the very earth trembles beneath their feet. The ceremony continues unabated, as the mages pour their life force into the vortex, drawing upon the very essence of the elements to fuel their creation. As the ritual reaches its climax, the swirling energy begins to coalesce into a massive, glowing orb. The mages step back, breathless and exhausted, their eyes fixed on the pulsing sphere of light. In the blink of an eye, the orb explodes outward, bathing the sky in a blinding light. When the light fades, a massive, towering figure stands before them, its form seemingly made of living gold and air. The elemental, known as the avatar of the dragonflight, is the embodiment of the elemental forces the mages have summoned. Standing over 100 feet tall, it has the upper body of a muscular dragon and the lower body of a powerful eagle. Its skin is gold-scaled and crackling, and it carries a pair of wings on its back, each tipped with fire. The avatar of the dragonflight addresses the two emperors, its voice deep and commanding like the roar of a raging dragon. I am the avatar of the dragonflight, called forth by your summoning. I am here to aid you in your time of need. What is it you wish me to do? The Empire of Frosthaven then hears that the Empire of Sanctity and Holy Roman Empire have summoned the avatar of the dragonflight. In response, they decide to attempt to establish diplomatic relations with the Kingdom of Scotland for an alliance and trade agreement, and thus they begin to attempt to establish negotiations. The negotiations are held at the Great Frosty Confluence, where the three great rivers of the Empire meet and flow southward, their icy waters mingling in the winter winds. A grand pavilion has been erected upon the frozen surface of the rivers, its walls adorned with the banners of the Empire of Frosthaven and the Kingdom of Scotland. Within the pavilion, the leaders of the two empires sit across a massive obsidian table, their faces set in serious expressions. The envoy of the Kingdom of Scotland, a tall, regal woman with hair the color of winter wheat, speaks first. Your Majesty, we come here with an open heart and a sincere desire for peace and mutual benefit. The Empire of Frosthaven and the Kingdom of Scotland have long been neighbors, and while there have been times of tension in the past, we believe that those days are behind us. We propose an alliance, strengthened by a trade agreement that would benefit both our peoples for generations to come. The Emperor of the Empire of Frosthaven, a stern but fair man, leans forward on his throne-like chair. We too, Lady Envoy, have come to this table with the same intentions. The Empire of Frosthaven has always valued its neighbors and seeks harmony among the nations of the world. A trade agreement would indeed be most welcome, as our empire has much to offer in terms of furs, ice crystals, and precious metals mined from the heart of the great frozen wastes. He pauses for a moment, considering her words carefully before continuing. However, we must also discuss the recent events involving the summons of legendary creatures by both the Empire of Sanctity and the Holy Roman Empire. As neighbors, we wish to avoid any potential conflicts or misunderstandings that may arise from such actions. It is our hope that our two empires can work together to ensure the safety and stability of our region. The envoy of the Kingdom of Scotland nods in understanding. Your Majesty, the Empire of Scotland shares your concerns regarding the summoning of such powerful creatures. We too have taken steps to bolster our defenses and ensure the safety of our people. As allies, we would be more than willing to share intelligence and resources with the Empire of Frosthaven in this regard. The Emperor of the Empire of Frosthaven looks thoughtful as he listens to her words. This is indeed a reassuring offer, Lady Envoy. The Empire of Frosthaven would welcome such cooperation. As for the trade agreement, we propose that we establish a joint council, composed of equal representatives from both empires, to oversee the negotiations and ensure that both parties benefit equally from the arrangement. The envoy of the Kingdom of Scotland nods in agreement. Your Majesty, that sounds like a most reasonable proposal. We are confident that such a council would be instrumental in fostering mutual understanding and trust between our two empires. As for the trade agreement itself, we have already begun preparing a list of goods and services that we believe would be of interest to your people. The Emperor of the Empire of Frosthaven smiles warmly. That is most encouraging, Lady Envoy. We too have been preparing our own list and look forward to reviewing it with you. In the meantime, we would like to extend an invitation to your people to send explorers and traders into our lands, so that they may see firsthand the wealth and beauty that our empire has to offer. The envoy of the Kingdom of Scotland returns the Emperor's smile. Your Majesty, we accept your invitation with great enthusiasm. Our traders and explorers would be delighted to experience the wonders of your empire and establish lasting commercial ties with your people. Our historians and scholars are also eager to learn more about your culture and history, which has been shaped by the harsh but beautiful landscapes that surround you. The Emperor of the Empire of Frosthaven nods, pleased with her response. Then it is settled. Our joint council shall begin their negotiations immediately, with the goal of finalizing the trade agreement as swiftly as possible. In the meantime, our respective diplomats shall work together to ensure that our two empires remain strong and prosperous, while also striving to maintain peace and stability in the face of any external threats. The envoy of the Kingdom of Scotland, feeling a newfound sense of camaraderie with the Emperor, bows graciously. Your Majesty, I am confident that this alliance will prove to be a shining example of what can be achieved when two great nations come together in mutual respect and cooperation. The people of Scotland look forward to a long and prosperous partnership with the people of Frosthaven. The Empire of Sanctity and Holy Roman Empire learn of the alliance formed between the Empire of Frosthaven and the Kingdom of Scotland, and thus decide to attempt to establish a diplomatic alliance with the Kingdom of England, but use the threat of the avatars to help convince the Kingdom of England to accept the offer of a diplomatic alliance, and thus they begin to attempt diplomatic negotiations with the Kingdom of England. The negotiations between the two empires and the kingdom are tense and fraught with tension, as each side attempts to gain the upper hand. The Empire of Sanctity and Holy Roman Empire use the threat of the avatar of the dragonflight as a bargaining chip, while the Kingdom of England counters with its own military might and potential alliances with other kingdoms and empires. In the end, a delicate balance is struck. The Kingdom of England agrees to enter into a diplomatic alliance with the Empire of Sanctity and Holy Roman Empire, acknowledging the mutual threat posed by the avatars and the other empires. In return, the Empire agrees to respect England's autonomy and territorial integrity, while also offering economic and military support when needed. Emperor Marcus Aurelius of the Empire of Sanctity and the Holy Roman Empire immediately calls for an invasion and attempted conquest of the Kingdom of France, and thusly, the Empire of Sanctity and the Holy Roman Empire invade and attempt to conquer the Kingdom of France. Meanwhile, the Empire of Frosthaven, feeling threatened by the alliance between the Empire of Sanctity and the Holy Roman Empire, as well as the Kingdom of England, attempts to form an alliance with the Kingdom of Spain, who is also feeling threatened by the growing power of the other empires and kingdoms. The negotiations between the Empire of Frosthaven and the Kingdom of Spain are much smoother than those with England, as both sides share a common enemy in the form of the Empire of Sanctity and the Holy Roman Empire. The Empire of Frosthaven offers military support and access to its powerful Ice Phoenix, while the Kingdom of Spain promises to provide naval support and assistance in conquering the Americas, which are currently under the control of the Empire of Sanctity and the Holy Roman Empire. After weeks of diplomatic talks, a formal alliance is declared between the Empire of Frosthaven and the Kingdom of Spain. The two empires begin to coordinate their efforts, planning a multi-pronged attack on the Empire of Sanctity and the Holy Roman Empire. While the Empire of Frosthaven focuses on attacking from the north, the Kingdom of Spain will launch a naval invasion from the south, aiming to conquer the Americas and cut off the mainland empires from their valuable resources and territories. Part 3, War of the Kingdom of France. Meanwhile, the Empire of Sanctity and Holy Roman Empire are invading and attempting to conquer the Kingdom of France. The attack on France is swift and brutal, as the combined might of the Empire and the avatar of the Dragonflight rain down destruction upon the kingdom's cities and military strongholds. Emperor Marcus Aurelius personally leads his armies across the English Channel, landing on the northern coast and marching inland, while the avatar of the Dragonflight lends its elemental power to the attack, summoning walls of fire to protect the advancing forces and creating gusts of wind that uproot trees and send enemy soldiers flying through the air. The Kingdom of France, however, is not without its defenses. King Philip VI calls upon his own allies, including the Kingdom of England, for aid. England, still reeling from its own recent diplomatic negotiations, is slow to respond, but eventually sends a small force of knights and archers to aid their former enemies in holding off the empire's advance. The battle lines are drawn across the verdant countryside, with the Empire of Sanctity and the Holy Roman Empire pressing forward against a determined resistance from the Kingdom of France, aided by the Kingdom of England and other smaller allies. As the conflict drags on, Emperor Marcus Aurelius begins to grow impatient. He realizes that his forces are stretched thin, and that the Kingdom of England is proving to be a more formidable adversary than he initially anticipated. He decides to take a gamble and send a message to King Edward III of England, offering him a truce and the opportunity to join forces against the common threat posed by the Kingdom of France. The message is delivered through a series of secret negotiations, conducted deep within the forests of the Norman border. King Edward III, initially skeptical of the empire's intentions, is intrigued by the offer. He sees the potential for a strategic alliance that could greatly strengthen his position against the other empires and kingdoms. After much deliberation, he agrees to meet with Emperor Marcus Aurelius in secret, under the guise of negotiating a formal peace treaty. The location is chosen, a secluded clearing in the heart of the forest of Brocéliande, steeped in legend and rumor. As the two monarchs meet, they exchange formal greetings and discuss the terms of the treaty. Emperor Marcus Aurelius speaks of a new era of cooperation between their two kingdoms, one where they can put aside their differences and focus on the greater good. King Edward III listens carefully, his eyes narrowed in suspicion. Finally, the emperor presses the issue, asking the king to consider formally aligning their kingdoms against the Kingdom of France. King Edward III leans back in his seat, steepling his fingers beneath his chin. He studies the emperor carefully, trying to gauge his intentions. After a moment, he speaks. "Your offer is most intriguing, Emperor Marcus Aurelius. However, I must be frank, I am not convinced that your intentions are entirely honorable. You have spent the better part of a year waging war upon my ally, the Kingdom of France. How can I trust that you would not do the same to me, were I to join forces with you?" The emperor smiles reassuringly. "I understand your hesitation, King Edward. But consider this, if we were to join together, our combined strength would be unmatched. We could bring an end to the bloodshed and restore peace to these lands. As for my intentions towards your kingdom, I give you my solemn word that they shall remain unchanged. The Empire of Frosthaven seeks only to protect its interests and those of its allies. With your help, we could ensure that those interests are secure for generations to come." King Edward III nods thoughtfully, his expression unreadable. He takes a deep breath, steepling his fingers once more beneath his chin. "Your words are persuasive, Emperor Marcus Aurelius. But I must weigh them carefully. In the meantime, I will consult with my advisors and consider your proposal. May I have your leave to withdraw, that I might return to my kingdom and make my decision?" Emperor Marcus Aurelius bows his head in acknowledgement. "Of course, King Edward. Take all the time you need. My forces and I shall remain at the ready, prepared to aid you in whatever decision you make. You have but to ask." King Edward III rises from his seat, inclining his head in a nod. "Thank you, Emperor Marcus. I will not keep you waiting any longer. Until we meet again, may the gods watch over us all. The two monarchs exchange one final, formal handshake before parting ways. The no longer distracted Empire of Sanctity and Holy Roman Empire continues their invasion and attempted conquest of the Kingdom of France. The Kingdom of England, under the rule of King Edward III, continues to defend their ally, the Kingdom of France. The tides of war ebb and flow as both sides engage in fierce battles, strategic maneuvers, and skirmishes. In the meantime, Emperor Marcus Aurelius and his forces remain vigilant, ready to aid King Edward III should he choose to accept the offer of alliance. The forest of Brocéliande, where their secret meeting took place, continues to be a source of legend and intrigue for both empires. As the war between the Empire of Sanctity and Holy Roman Empire and the Kingdom of France rages on, King Edward III finds himself constantly torn between his loyalty to his ally and his desire for a strategic advantage. He ponders the emperor's words, weighing the potential risks and rewards of such an alliance. Meanwhile, the forest of Brocéliande, a place steeped in legend and mystery, continues to be a source of intrigue for both empires. The ancient Druids who once dwelled there are said to have left behind powerful artifacts and knowledge that could tip the balance of power in the war. King Edward III, unable to shake the feeling that the emperor might not be entirely trustworthy, secretly sends a small expedition into the forest to search for these artifacts. The mission is led by Sir Lancelot, a seasoned knight with a reputation for bravery and cunning. Accompanied by a small band of loyal knights and a druid advisor named Merlin, Sir Lancelot ventures deep into the forest, facing treacherous terrain and supernatural threats at every turn. Meanwhile, the war between the Empire of Sanctity and Holy Roman Empire and the Kingdom of France rages on. On the battlefield, King Edward III and his forces make significant gains, pushing the enemy back and saving several key strongholds from falling into their hands. The emperor, impressed by King Edward's military prowess and strategic thinking, begins to reconsider his earlier doubts about the king's loyalty. Emperor Marcus Aurelius then suddenly demands a forceful annexation of the Kingdom of England for breaking their alliance and briefly siding with the Kingdom of France. King Edward III, feeling betrayed by the emperor's sudden demand, decides to seek aid from the one person he believes can help him, Merlin, the druid advisor accompanying Sir Lancelot in the forest of Brocéliande. Merlin, using his knowledge of the ancient artifacts hidden within the forest, manages to forge a powerful alliance between the Kingdom of England, the Kingdom of France, and the Druids of Brocéliande. Emperor Marcus Aurelius then reveals another power of the sacred relic, using it to summon an unstoppable army of undead warriors from the battlefield. These skeletal warriors, once human soldiers who died in battle, now serve as the emperor's unyielding foot soldiers. The tide of the war begins to turn once more, as the undead army marches across the battlefield, slaughtering King Edward's forces and pushing them back toward their capital. King Edward III, desperate for aid, sends word to Sir Lancelot and Merlin, hoping that the Druids' knowledge of the ancient artifacts will once again prove to be their salvation. Sir Lancelot and his men, having successfully recovered several powerful artifacts from the forest of Brocéliande, arrive at the battlefield just as the Empire of Sanctity and Holy Roman Empire is about to breach the walls of London. Using the ancient relics, Sir Lancelot and Merlin manage to summon a legion of mythical creatures from the forest, unicorns, pegasi, and dragons. These ethereal beasts, once thought to exist only in legend, now soar across the battlefield, their hooves striking down the undead army and their breath incinerating the skeletal warriors. The tide of the war begins to turn once more, as King Edward's forces, bolstered by the aid of the mythical creatures, launch a counterattack against the emperor's undead army. Emperor Marcus Aurelius then sends in the Avatar of the Waters, the Avatar of the Winds, and the Avatar of the Dragonflight to guarantee victory against the Kingdom of France, the Kingdom of England, and the Forest of Brocéliande. These elemental avatars unleash their powers upon the battlefield, summoning mighty storms, twisting the winds into deadly whirlwinds, and commanding the very elements themselves to aid in the destruction of their enemies. King Edward III, realizing that he is vastly outnumbered and outmatched by the elemental avatars, makes a desperate gamble. He sends word to the Druids of Brocéliande, asking them to send their most powerful magic users to aid in the fight. The Druids, impressed by King Edward's bravery and determination, send their finest adepts, who begin to cast powerful spells upon the battlefield. Emperor Marcus Aurelius then casually uses the sacred relic to steal the magic of all of the Druids for himself. As their powers are siphoned away, the elemental avatars grow even more powerful, and the tide of the battle begins to turn decisively in the Empire's favor. With their magic diminished, King Edward III and his allies find themselves struggling against the onslaught of elemental fury. Sir Lancelot, desperate for a way to turn the tide of battle, decides to take matters into his own hands. He steals one of the Emperor's sacred artifacts, an ancient amulet that grants the wearer control over the elements. Using this artifact, he is able to summon a single, powerful elemental of his own, a dragon. This dragon, under Sir Lancelot's command, flies through the air, breathing fire and raising the enemy forces with unparalleled fury. Emperor Marcus Aurelius, tired of their interference, personally kills Sir Lancelot and Merlin and takes the sacred artifact back, and then, simply by using it, finally finishes off the Kingdom of England and all of its remaining hopes. The forest of Brocéliande, however, remains. Though much of it has been destroyed by the war, the ancient Druids who survived have vowed to rebuild it and restore it to its former glory. They have also sworn to keep the location of the sacred relic hidden, lest it fall into the wrong hands once more. Emperor Marcus Aurelius, though, swiftly uses an artifact to gain complete and total control over the forest of Brocéliande and the Druids which dwell within it and integrate it into the Empire of Sanctity, leaving only the Kingdom of France to conquer, which will fall swiftly. With the forest under his thumb and the Druids at his command, Marcus Aurelius begins to unlock the secrets of the sacred relic, harnessing its power for his own twisted purposes. He uses the relic to raise an army of undead Druids, bound to serve him until the end of time, and sends them forth to conquer the known world. Firstly, finishing the conquest of the Kingdom of France. Emperor Marcus Aurelius then begins to expand his empire, setting his sights on new lands across the sea. He commissions the construction of a massive fleet of warships, using the ancient relics to summon elemental creatures to protect them from harm. The Druids of Brocéliande, now bound to his will, use their magic to aid in the construction of these vessels. Part 4. The rise of the God Emperor. The Empire of Frosthaven then attempts to establish diplomatic relations with the Kingdom of Ireland, and thus, they attempt to initiate diplomatic negotiations. The emissary of the Empire of Frosthaven arrives at the Kingdom of Ireland's capital, bearing gifts of furs, ice crystals, and precious metals. He is escorted to the throne room, where King of Ireland awaits him. The room is adorned with tapestries depicting the lush green lands of Ireland and the harsh beauty of the great frozen wastes. A fire crackles in the hearth, casting flickering light on the polished wooden floors. "Your Majesty," the emissary says, bowing low before the king, Emperor Thoric II of the Empire of Frosthaven sends his greetings and wishes to establish diplomatic relations between our two great nations. The King of Ireland raises an eyebrow, intrigued. "Indeed? The Empire of Frosthaven is a land of legend to us, a place of unimaginable cold and ice. I must confess, I was not aware that you maintained relations with any other kingdoms besides your own." "Your Majesty," the emissary replies, "while it is true that the Empire of Frosthaven has often been isolated by its harsh climate, we have maintained contact with other kingdoms through trade and diplomacy. We believe that the interests of the Kingdom of Ireland and the Empire of Frosthaven align in many ways, particularly when it comes to ensuring the stability and prosperity of our respective regions." The king listens intently, his expression thoughtful. "You speak wisely. Ireland has long been a land of peace and trade, and we have always sought to foster alliances with nations who share our values. I would be honored to discuss the possibility of an alliance between our kingdoms." The emissary beams with gratitude. "Then allow me to present these gifts from Emperor Thoric II, as a symbol of his respect and friendship towards your Majesty and the people of Ireland. He places the gifts on a nearby table. Our two empires could work together to counter the influence of neighboring powers who seek to expand their territories at our expense. The king nods, his expression serious. Indeed, we have seen the actions of certain empires in the East with great concern. I believe that a strong alliance between our nations would not only benefit our people, but also serve as a bulwark against those who would threaten the stability of our region. Then let us begin the negotiations, the emissary says, his voice firm with determination. Emperor Thoric II is eager to establish a treaty of friendship and trade between our kingdoms, and I am confident that together, we can forge a lasting alliance that will stand the test of time. The King of Ireland nods in agreement. Indeed, such an alliance would be of great benefit to both our peoples. We must work together to ensure that our interests are protected and that our voices are heard in matters of regional importance. He gestures to one of his advisors, who steps forward to escort the emissary to a private chamber for discussions. As they depart, the emissary can't help but feel a sense of optimism about the potential for this new alliance. The Kingdom of Ireland seems genuinely interested in forging a strong bond with the Empire of Frosthaven, and Emperor Thoric II will surely be pleased to hear of this progress. The negotiations will no doubt be challenging, but with the foundation of mutual respect and shared goals, they are off to a promising start. The emissary enters the private chamber, where he finds the advisor waiting for him. Your Highness has instructed me to assist you in any way I can during these discussions, the advisor says, bowing his head respectfully. Please, feel free to express any concerns or proposals you may have. The emissary takes a seat at the elaborately carved table, steeling himself for the negotiations ahead. He begins by outlining Emperor Thoric II's primary objectives, the establishment of a formal trade agreement, mutual defense pact, and the sharing of intelligence regarding regional affairs. The advisor listens carefully, making notes as the emissary speaks. When the emissary finishes, the advisor pauses for a moment, seemingly deep in thought. Your proposals are most interesting, he says finally. The Kingdom of Ireland is indeed eager to strengthen its ties with Frosthaven and to foster greater cooperation between our two empires. However, there are several points that we must discuss further before coming to any formal agreements. The advisor leans forward, resting his elbows on the table. Firstly, we must discuss the specifics of the trade agreement. While we appreciate the potential benefits of free trade between our empires, we must also ensure that our respective economies are not adversely affected. We must consider tariffs, quotas, and other trade barriers that may be necessary to protect our industries and workers. The emissary nods thoughtfully. Of course, Your Highness. Emperor Thoric II is willing to work closely with the Kingdom of Ireland to address any concerns you may have. Our aim is not to undermine your economy, but rather to create a mutually beneficial partnership that strengthens both our empires. The advisor seems satisfied with this response and continues. Secondly, regarding the Mutual Defense Pact, we must discuss the specifics of how such an alliance would be implemented. Would Frosthaven be willing to commit military forces to defend Ireland, and would Ireland be expected to do the same in the event of a conflict in the Empire of Frosthaven? The emissary hesitates for a moment, unsure how to respond. This is one of the more delicate issues that must be addressed. Emperor Thoric II is committed to the defense of Ireland and its people, he says carefully. However, our military might is primarily focused on maintaining stability within our own borders. It is not our intention to engage in conflicts beyond our borders. That being said, we would expect Ireland to reciprocate this commitment in times of need. The advisor nods, seeming to consider this response. Your response is most appreciated, he says. These are indeed important matters that we must discuss openly and honestly. I will bring your proposals before the king and we will begin negotiations in earnest. I am hopeful that we can reach an agreement that benefits both our empires. The emissary expresses his gratitude and begins to make notes on the discussion, anticipating the reactions of Emperor Thoric II and his advisors back in Frosthaven. He knows that this is only the beginning of a long and arduous journey, but with the foundation of mutual respect and shared goals between their two empires, he is confident that they can forge a lasting alliance that will stand the test of time. As the days pass, the emissary continues to meet with various advisors and officials within the Kingdom of Ireland. Each meeting provides valuable insights into the kingdom's culture, history, and political landscape. He is particularly fascinated by the kingdom's strong ties to its Celtic heritage, which is evident in its art, music, and architecture. The emissary finds himself drawn to the beauty of the Emerald Isle, from the rolling hills of the countryside to the bustling streets of the capital city. One afternoon, he is invited to attend a grand feast hosted by the king in honor of his visit. Seated at the head of the table, the King of Ireland raises his goblet in a toast to the Empire of Frosthaven. To our new allies across the sea, he proclaims, "May our friendship grow stronger with each passing day, and may our empires prosper together." The emissary stands, joining the king in his toast, as the rest of the guests erupt into cheers and applause. Throughout the evening, the emissary has the opportunity to engage in informal conversations with various members of the court. He learns about the kingdom's complex system of government, which blends elements of both monarchy and parliament, and hears stories of Ireland's past triumphs and tragedies. As he listens to these tales, he begins to understand the deep sense of pride and resilience that defines the Irish people. One of the more intriguing topics of discussion is the role of magic within the kingdom. While it is not as prevalent as it is in Frosthaven, there are rumors of powerful druids who live in secluded groves, studying the ancient arts and maintaining a delicate balance between the natural and supernatural worlds. The emissary finds himself drawn to these mysterious figures, fascinated by the idea of a society where magic and technology coexist in harmony. As the feast comes to an end, the emissary takes a stroll through the palace gardens, admiring the lush greenery and the sound of a distant fountain. He finds himself reflecting on the day's events and the potential for a lasting alliance between their two empires. He knows that there will be challenges ahead, but with the trust and mutual respect that have been established, he is confident that they can overcome any obstacle. As he returns to his chambers for the evening, the emissary can't help but feel a sense of awe and respect for the Kingdom of Ireland. Its rich history, vibrant culture, and resilient spirit have left an indelible mark on his heart, and he knows that this journey has forever changed the course of his life. The Empire of Frosthaven and the Kingdom of Ireland may be worlds apart, but tonight, they are united by a bond that transcends distance and time. The emissary spends the night reflecting on the negotiations that lie ahead, carefully considering the arguments and counter-arguments he will present to Emperor Thoric II and his advisors. He knows that the future of both empires hangs in the balance, and he takes his responsibility seriously. As he drifts off to sleep, he is comforted by the knowledge that he has done his best to forge a path forward that benefits both empires equally. Over the next several weeks, the emissary continues his discussions with the Irish court, navigating the complex web of politics and diplomacy with skill and grace. He is impressed by the intelligence and resourcefulness of the king and his advisors, and he finds himself growing ever more fond of the Emerald Isle. As the days turn into weeks and the negotiations begin to bear fruit, he knows that they are on the cusp of something truly historic. One morning, as he takes a walk along the beach, the emissary is approached by a lone figure dressed in simple robes. The figure introduces himself as a druid, one of the keepers of the ancient ways. He offers to show the emissary a hidden grove where he can witness the power of magic firsthand. Intrigued and curious, the emissary accepts the invitation, eager to learn more about this mysterious world. As they journey deeper into the forest, the emissary finds himself surrounded by towering trees and the songs of countless birds. The air is thick with the scent of earth and growing things, and he can feel the weight of centuries of history pressing down upon him. The druid leads him to a clearing, where a small circle of standing stones is surrounded by a circle of glowing mushrooms. It is here, he explains, that the druids conduct their most powerful rituals. The emissary takes a tentative step forward, his curiosity overwhelming any lingering doubts or fears. The druid nods approvingly, gesturing for him to sit on a nearby boulder. For several minutes, the only sound is the rustle of leaves and the distant calls of animals. Then, without warning, the druid begins to chant in a language the emissary has never heard before. His voice rises and falls, growing louder and more powerful with each passing moment. As the chanting reaches its peak, the mushrooms around the circle begin to glow, brighter, casting an ethereal light upon the scene. The air grows thick with mist, and the emissary feels a strange tingling sensation throughout his body. He looks up to see the druid standing atop one of the standing stones, arms outstretched to the sky. With a final, triumphant cry, the druid hurls a handful of glowing mist towards the heavens. As the mist dissipates, the emissary finds himself gazing up at a vision of breathtaking beauty. The clouds above have taken on the shape of a great dragon, its wings outstretched as if about to take flight. The image flickers and wavers, seeming almost alive, before fading away like smoke in the wind. The druid steps down from the stone, smiling enigmatically at the emissary. "You have seen but a small glimpse of our power," he says. "Magic is not something to be feared or dismissed. It is a part of our world, and it can be a force for good, if used wisely." The emissary nods, his mind reeling from the experience. He knows that he has witnessed something truly extraordinary, something that will stay with him for the rest of his life. As they make their way back through the forest, the druid continues to speak of the old ways, of the balance between the worlds of men and magic. The emissary listens intently, his curiosity piqued by the possibilities that such knowledge could unlock. Upon his return to the palace, the emissary finds that the negotiations between the empires have reached a critical juncture. He takes the stage, drawing on the wisdom and power he has witnessed during his time with the druid. His arguments are met with awe and respect, and it becomes clear that his experiences have given him a unique perspective that none of the other emissaries possess. The king, impressed by the emissary's newfound insights, asks him to stay and serve as an advisor during the final stages of the negotiations. Together, they navigate the treacherous waters of politics and magic, striking a delicate balance that pleases both empires. The treaty they forge is one of mutual respect and cooperation, with provisions for the preservation of both human and magical heritage. As the days turn into weeks and months, the emissary finds himself becoming increasingly immersed in the world of magic and its history. He studies ancient texts, learns arcane languages, and practices the rituals of the druids, slowly earning their trust and respect. He becomes known as a man who straddles the divide between the mundane and the magical, and his counsel is sought by kings and queens alike. The Empire of Frosthaven then attempts to establish diplomatic relations with the Kingdom of Portugal. The emissary is once again chosen for this important mission, as his unique perspective and knowledge of magic make him an invaluable asset. He travels across the vast ocean, navigating treacherous waters and unfamiliar lands before finally reaching the kingdom. The contrast between the lush, green forests of the Emerald Isle and the dry, arid deserts of Portugal is striking, but the emissary finds solace in the fact that magic seems to thrive here as well, albeit in a different form. The King of Portugal, impressed by the emissary's previous achievements, grants him an audience immediately. The emissary takes this opportunity to share his experiences with the druids and the balance they have struck between magic and humanity. The king listens intently, intrigued by the possibilities of such a harmonious relationship. He invites the emissary to stay and serve as an advisor, helping Portugal navigate the delicate balance between embracing magic and maintaining order. The emissary spends several months in the desert kingdom, learning about its unique brand of magic, which revolves around the harnessing of elemental forces. He discovers that the people of Portugal have a deep respect for nature, which they see as a manifestation of the divine. Magic, in their eyes, is merely a tool to help maintain that divine balance. He teaches them about the old ways of the druids, and they in turn share their knowledge of elemental magic. Together, they create a new form of magic that harmonizes the two traditions. As news of this union spreads throughout the land, the emissary finds himself hailed as a hero and a visionary. He is granted audiences with queens and emperors from far-flung lands, all of whom are eager to learn from his experiences. He becomes known as the Archmage of the Emerald Isle, a title that carries great weight and responsibility. Emperor Marcus Aurelius then announces that a great war that will determine the future of Europe itself is fast approaching, and that the best course of action is to fully unify the Empire of Sanctity and the Holy Roman Empire together under the Empire of Sanctity to centralize power to prepare for the coming continental war. The people of the Holy Roman Empire, seeing the power of the elemental avatars and the Druids of Broceliande, accept Marcus Aurelius's proposal without hesitation. The two empires are united, and a new flag is raised, the flag of the Empire of Sanctity, bearing the image of an eagle clutching a sacred relic in its talons. Emperor Marcus Aurelius then has a ritual done in the forest of Broceliande, using all of the artifacts and the sacred relics centrally to attempt to fuse all of the magic, all of the artifacts, the avatar of the waves, the avatar of the winds, and the avatar of the dragonflight, and all of the druids and undead druids, and, most crucially, the sacred relic into himself, to become a godly being, a god emperor, and thus, the attempted ritual is started. As the ritual begins, the forest is engulfed in a cacophony of elemental energies, as the four elemental avatars are drawn toward the center of the forest, their power becoming increasingly unstable. The druids, bound by their oaths to Marcus Aurelius, chant ancient incantations, funneling their magic into the emperor himself. The undead druids, their eyes glowing with an unholy light, dance around a massive obsidian altar, their skeletal hands clutching ancient artifacts. The air crackles with energy, and a blinding light fills the sky. As the ritual reaches its climax, Marcus Aurelius's body begins to glow with a divine aura, and his form appears to shift, becoming larger, more imposing. The elemental avatars, their power now unified within the emperor, fuse with him, becoming part of his very essence. The druids and the undead druids, their minds linked by the relic, become an extension of his will. And then, suddenly, he is physically his normal self, but with a truly divine and omnipotent aura surrounding him. He is now the God Emperor of the Empire of Sanctity, the first and only mortal to ever ascend to such a position. His reign is eternal, his power unrivaled. The elemental avatars, the druids, and the undead druids serve him as his loyal subjects, their minds and bodies linked to his through the sacred relic. The Empire of Frosthaven then seeks to form diplomatic alliances with as many kingdoms and empires as quickly as possible. The emissary, now known as the Archmage of the Emerald Isle, is once again chosen to lead these negotiations. He travels far and wide, visiting kingdoms of every shape and size, each with its own unique culture and tradition of magic. He brings with him the knowledge he has gained from the Druids, the elementalists of Portugal, and other learned scholars and sages from across the world. In each new land, the Archmage takes great care to understand the local customs and beliefs, for it is only through respect and empathy that true understanding can be achieved. He speaks to kings and queens, priests and wizards, commoners and nobles alike, listening to their stories and sharing his own. He tells of the balance he has seen maintained between magic and humanity in the lands of the Druids, and of the harmony he has witnessed between elemental and natural magic in the desert kingdom of Portugal. He travels to a land where magic is seen as a gift from the gods, and where wizards are treated as near deities themselves. The Archmage cautions against such hubris, reminding them that magic is a powerful tool that must be wielded with care and wisdom. He shows them the destruction that can be wrought when magic is used selfishly or recklessly, and how the balance between magic and humanity can be maintained to prevent such catastrophes. He visits a land where magic is feared and suppressed, where wizards are hunted down as heretics and burned at the stake. The Archmage tells them of the wisdom and knowledge that can be gained through the study of magic, and how it can be used to improve the lives of all people. He urges them to find a way to coexist with magic, to learn to control their fear and embrace the possibilities that it offers. The Empire of Frosthaven uses a ritual to summon the Frost Titan, a colossus of ice and frost whose mere presence can freeze entire landscapes and command the frigid elements to do its bidding. Towering over the tallest mountains, the Frost Titan embodies the raw power of winter's wrath and serves as a symbol of the Empire of Frosthaven's resilience and determination. The Storm Leviathan, a behemoth of thunder and lightning that roams the skies with unparalleled ferocity. With its electrifying presence, the Storm Leviathan can summon tempests of unparalleled intensity and unleash devastating bolts of lightning upon its foes, posing a formidable threat to any who dare challenge its dominion. The Earth Colossus, a titan of stone and earth whose unyielding strength can shatter mountains and reshape the very landscape itself. As the embodiment of the Earth's enduring power, the Earth Colossus will stand as a stalwart defender of the Empire of Frosthaven, anchoring our realm to the bedrock of stability and fortitude, and the Inferno Phoenix, a celestial being of fire and flame whose incandescent presence can engulf entire armies in its fiery embrace. Born from the heart of the hottest infernos, the Inferno Phoenix embodies the relentless fury of the flames and serves as a beacon of defiance against the encroaching darkness, all just to hopefully stand a chance against the God Emperor of the Empire of Sanctity, God Emperor Marcus Aurelius, as futile a hope as that truly is. Part 5, Epilogue. As the Archmage of the Emerald Isle continues his diplomatic missions, he finds that his unique perspective and understanding of the balance between magic and humanity resonate deeply with many of the kingdoms and empires he visits. He forms alliances with far-flung lands, each one more powerful and influential than the last. His reputation grows, and soon word reaches the God Emperor of the Empire of Sanctity, Marcus Aurelius, of this Archmage and his growing coalition of allies. He then snaps his fingers and controls the entirety of the Empire of Frosthaven, and all of Earth, all of existence at that. With a snap of God Emperor Marcus Aurelius' fingers, the entire Empire of Frosthaven, the entirety of Europe, the entire world at that, the whole universe at that, all of existence even, all were sudden under his control. With the Archmage of the Emerald Isle and his coalition of allies now in the palm of his hand, God Emperor Marcus Aurelius now has all the power that he could ever want or need. The balance between magic and humanity, between gods and mortals, between order and chaos, between light and dark, between good and evil, between life and death, between everything and nothing, it was all his now, all subject to his whims. With his newfound power, the God Emperor begins to shape the world according to his will. He uses the elemental avatars to create great works of art, to terraform the landscape, and to bring forth a new age of prosperity and peace. The Druids, now freed from the burden of mortal existence, use their magic to aid him in these endeavors. God Emperor Marcus Aurelius holds up and looks down at the very first hand cannon created by his empire, and thinks back to how they came all of the way from struggling to create something as useless as this to him becoming the literally all-powerful God Emperor. As he stands there, the God Emperor's attention is drawn to the horizon, where dark clouds begin to gather. He senses a presence, a power that has not been felt in this world before. This new power, unlike anything he has felt before, is both terrifying and intoxicating. He knows that it will change the world, and he must be prepared. He turns the useless former hand cannon into the most powerful weapon possible with beyond imaginable power, as a fitting note to end the story off on. As the clouds continue to darken, the God Emperor summons his most trusted advisors to his throne room. The Druids, their robes billowing in the breeze, bow their heads respectfully. The elemental avatars, their bodies made of living stone and water, stand silently behind them. The undead Druids, their skeletal hands clutching ancient artifacts, watch intently from the shadows. He then resets everything back to the very beginning of the war, all of his power going into the sacred relic, which then falls into the hands of his past self, a humble noble living in San Marino, with dreams of conquest beyond imagination.